or like I
Bah.
don't know,
Like that?
laughing at Danny, but it
Goat boy.
sounded like a goat or a sheep or
Yeah.
something. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another live stream here inside the Code Noobs
At 9 on the dot,
group
I will
at
say.
9 on the dot. Yes, Danny, we
Not a
got
minute
you.
early, not a minute late.
Nope.
On the
Exactly.
dot. We made it today. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you here. People pulling into the live stream. How are you guys doing this morning? How's your week been?
Good.
Good.
Tired. Good.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
been a
was
long
telling
week.
Danny I've been having trouble sleeping this week. It's been a rough one for me.
Oh, we need to get
Yeah,
you a teddy bear.
I
Right?
know, right?
Something just to
Yeah.
snuggle with. That'll help.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
that's the problem right there. Randall needs a teddy bear.
There we go.
Who doesn't, though, right?
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, glad everybody tuned in today. Hope everyone's having a good Saturday. I'm tired. I was out late last night with friends. It was somebody's birthday party, so
Oh man,
um,
partying?
I am. I wouldn't say I was partying. Like I don't. I'm too old for that.
But
But
you were out.
I
Yeah.
was out
Mhm.
till late. Not like
So
I
late
don't
that the
stay up late
glasses are
anymore.
on this morning.
Yeah, and like my eyes just hurt from contacts and
Mhm.
all that good stuff.
They
But
make your eyes
anyway,
they make your eyes hurt?
contacts.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't take them out often, which
Oh,
I
oh,
do.
oh. Oh, okay.
You're supposed to take them out every day, but sometimes
I
Yeah.
you
mean,
have
just
them in
leave
for
them
a
for
week,
weeks at a
2
Sometimes a
time.
weeks.
day turns into like 3 years, and then your eyes have contact
It's
lenses
like
stuck to
fused to
them.
your eyes.
Yeah. No, no.
Remember when
Uh,
when they first came out, they were like those thick glass? That was always
mhm.
terrified me.
Oh
Those
my
ones, I was
God.
like, God, I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine putting that in my eye.
Feels
Yeah.
like a
No,
grain of
thank you.
sand.
Good
Yeah.
Yeah.
morning, David Campbell. Nice to have you here. How are you
Morning.
doing this morning? Well, I guess I'll just start getting into it.
Yeah.
But
Today we have a,
before you do, we've been
oh
doing some
man,
really
every
interesting
time.
stuff. Yeah, we've been doing some really interesting stuff recently in the Web Dev Incubator,
Yes, we have.
which is a
What
private
have we been
program that we
doing?
have for people who are looking to get jobs as developers as soon as possible. It kind of bridges the gap between any type of education you could be doing and working in the real world. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have
I mean,
some.
good.
Oh, well, I was gonna say, like, we have like integrated projects where we're all working on it simultaneously together as a real life team would do, using GitHub, creating our own components, and then integrating those components to create an actual functional JavaScript framework app for people who literally just started learning HTML and
From
CSS
scratch.
months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know it's cool, not only is it from scratch, but we're also going slow so that people can also digest it and learn it on the way, but they're also learning how to do it right and how to do it as a team, which is awesome. Stuff you'll never get from a boot camp or any kind of college or anything like that.
And actually,
Yeah.
some people in the Web Dev Incubator mentioned this past week how much they love it because it's not polished. It's not some tutorial you watch on YouTube where all of the problems have already been worked out beforehand and it just looks like magic. We actually have to figure out why things aren't working and
I,
then figure out some way to make them work.
we probably mentioned this before,
Yeah.
but that always used to make me so angry with the with watching tutorials when I was first starting because it's like they make it look so easy because they're copying the code. I mean, which makes sense. Don't get me wrong. Like
Sure.
you're making a YouTube video, you don't want it to be forever. So you're trying
Yeah.
to make,
Like
like it's already long
5 days.
enough. Yeah. But like still it is. It's frustrating because you don't get to see how the process is for people for real. And like I
Yeah.
think that like it makes you have a false conception of like what it means to be a developer if you don't see
Yeah.
that.
I think, going along with what you're saying, one of the most difficult things that's sort of passed on when you're learning development from more experienced developers to newer developers, one of the hardest things to pass on is how to handle the logic of like going about building an app, right? Like from conceptualizing the idea to deciding on a tech stack to actually starting the project, managing the project with, version control, all those different pieces.
Designing how your data is gonna look.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
we think about it as just like, oh, you just start typing HTML, CSS, JavaScript code, but there's actually all this logic that goes into like, how do I start doing that? And how do I make these choices about my project? Like which technologies to actually implement. And so that's something that I think is super missed in those videos is, you never get to see it, what the thought process was of that person going through building that until they actually just typed it on screen, but they're doing it at that point, sort of like it's second nature. Like they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to type this now. And that's, obviously that works perfectly. Good morning, Matthew. Um, so yeah, so one of the other things that I've seen a lot of inside of our group is that people are, because they've built this confidence around designing websites and developing websites in now Next.js, but also just in all the other ways that we have them building websites through vanilla and also through low code solutions. Um, I've seen a lot of people who are now taking the step up to finding work and building projects for people, right?
We just
And
have a couple people this week who just got work for people. Yeah, for
yeah,
actual people as clients. And that's awesome, dude. That's what we want.
yeah, I mean, like I like to think about the difference between what we have inside the incubator and what somebody who's going into a boot camp has, and really one of the main differences is one, there is less structure inside the web dev incubator. The idea here is it is, you are still self-learning. It's your own pace. um but
I wanted to say that though.
yeah.
I actually would argue that it's more structured because instead of dumping all kinds of just every technology that exists on them to just
Mhm.
throw everything at them, we actually are structured around core ideas and core technologies
That's
that
true.
work. And I think there is a difference there that's why they're getting out there faster, getting work. That's part
Yeah.
of it, I think. You
No,
know?
and I agree. And that's sort of what I was going to say is like when you go into a boot camp, it's months and months and months of theory and, example code and copy paste code. And that's great because it exposes you to stuff, but you never actually feel like you've done anything on your own. Like you've never had to solve any problems. And that's literally what software development is solving problems. And
All
so
it is.
yeah, like we encourage people and guide them through the process of actually going out and reaching out to businesses and getting out of your comfort zone and saying like, hey, networking with people that and
Wearing shirts like this.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, telling people that you actually are a web developer and that you can build them websites. And it's surprising, like, I think it's surprising to a lot of the students inside the incubator where they just like there was one particular day that we had which really blew my mind where I was like, hey, I have like a friend who like we could build a website for them, and I was thinking maybe we can do it as a group. And all of a sudden, like half of the people in the group were like, oh, I also know this person who needs a
Yeah.
website. This person needs a website. And it's like,
But there's no
whoa, why
jobs.
are
There's no jobs as a
No.
yeah,
web
it's like
developer.
why are we not
Everybody's getting fired. There's no jobs as a
Well,
web
you know what's,
developer.
I think that's what we forget though, is that there's all these huge companies, but for small businesses and stuff, a lot, and for like individuals who have like a small business, that doesn't isn't for them because they're going to cost a fortune. They're going to get a generic
sure.
thing, and like so you need freelance developers, and that's like there's so much work out there when you start looking, and there's so
Yeah.
many. If you just go online in your town, you'll see how many bad websites there are for God's sakes. Like they were
Oh my
built like
God.
in
Yeah.
'95.
And the more that you network and actually get yourself out there, the more it
Mhm.
just keeps coming, right? Because as soon as people know that you build websites, there's more people who want websites built than you have time to actually build.
Yeah.
And so anyway, the point of today's episode is really to talk about, what that looks like for somebody who's new in web development. Like, how do they actually go about finding these businesses and then maybe I don't know Next.js yet, right? Like a lot of our students don't know Next.js like in and out yet. So what do I do, right? Do I like learn it as I'm building it? Do I use other options? And so, yeah. So what do you guys, suggest in terms of like, what's the best first step for somebody who is considers them an aspiring web developer, maybe not like the most skilled developer in the world? What would you say is their best first step if they want to start earning money immediately?
I was actually thinking about this because this was something I went through myself, and I think a lot of people do, which is trying to figure out when should I start is hard. Like when should I start like trying to get clients? I mean, like trying to earn money
Yeah,
from this.
yeah,
And I think because you always, if you, it's like everything else in life, right? If you try to wait for the right moment, it'll never come because there's always more you can learn.
totally.
There's always more you can do. You can always be a better expert, whatever. And so I think part of it too is like the biggest first step is facing your fear and just going for it and trying. Because
Yeah,
at the end of the
totally.
day, like even if you're honest and do like a even if you do a free one first, like a simple website for free just to get started so you can
Yep.
show yourself that you can do it, that is like a huge win and will help you get over that hurdle of I'm a real developer. And I think that is
Yeah.
like one of the hardest things though at the beginning.
Yeah, and we have two students this week who did that, right? They like I literally had a conversation with them yesterday inside the we have a private Telegram group. So inside that group, we share what we're doing throughout the week, how everything's going. Um, and because ultimately, like we're their coaches, right? So as students, they're like, hey, this is what I'm doing. I just met this person. Um, they want a website built to do this. And this week we had two people who did exactly what you just said, right? They're approaching people with the mindset of, I'm gonna do this one for free because it's my first one. I'm gonna get experience. You're gonna give me a testimonial, right? Which is to me, it's a fair exchange for a simple website. And one of the coaching tips that I gave them is like, that's amazing, like excellent work, great job. Next one, charge for it
Yeah.
because it's going to feel uncomfortable to charge, right? Because you're like, I'm not skilled enough or whatever it is. All those thoughts come up. The imposter syndrome comes up. But the reality is, you're providing value to a business. And so you should charge for that. Like creating value is a reason to charge money. And the faster that you do that, the more that you're able to charge in the future. Like there's no like point in time where the world just says, "Hey, Danny, you're qualified enough to
Yeah.
like charge people now," or "Hey, Randall, you're qualified, like you have the skill set now to charge people for your services." It's just a matter of you being like, "Well, sure, I'll build you a website, but you got to pay me."
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Randall.
To answer your question earlier, my
Yeah.
first step is actually sell it first. So like
Mm.
people go about things completely backwards all the time. Like people want to become a podcaster, so they go buy all the microphones and all the software and all the courses and everything, and then they never produce anything. Or
Yeah.
like they want to become a web developer, so they go buy the courses on Udemy and Free Code Camp and all these things, and they go do all these different courses, and it takes years and years and years, and then the JavaScript, oh my goodness, that big obstacle, and then we get around to making websites. But like I remember, because back in the day, learning SEO, you know this, learning it from Alex Becker, and
Hmm.
like his big thing was first thing you do, get a client. And
Yeah.
he would have these live streams, these webinars, and there would be like 100 people on the webinar, and everybody would be like, but what about when this happens? And what about when this happens? And what about when this happens? And he's like, just go get a client. And
Yeah.
they're like, but what about when this happens? And what about when this happens? And he's like, do you have a client yet? No,
Yeah.
just go get a client. And like literally, because once you do that, then it puts your back against the wall. But
Yeah.
you actually have to be held responsible. And guess what? There's a whole bunch of people who shouldn't be making websites that are earning a lot of
That
money
are
doing
doing
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And,
you
and
might
the
as well just go get a client, start making some money off of it, screw up, like mess it up until you're able to get it right and just
Yeah,
get
Yeah.
some
I
experience.
I think it's a great point too, is like all those questions that you have about like, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? Like, what do I do then? You're never going to get the answer until you actually do it, right? The answer comes by having that client, having that happen, and then figuring it out and saying, did that work well or did it not, right?
What I love about those questions too is 90% of the time they don't even come up because you've never done anything for real. So you don't even have any sense of what the real problems are that are going to
Yeah,
arise.
exactly.
And like it is funny though, because I think this is one of the major hurdles and our imagination will run wild and create all these
Yeah.
things. But like, like you were saying, Randall, like, it is there's value to putting your back against the wall. And like the reality is like you can do this. There's so many people out there doing software development and development that are terrible at it, working at
Oh yeah.
companies,
And they make a
working,
ton of money.
yeah.
I've talked to so many people and here's the point, right? I think this is a really important point. I've talked to I can't tell you how many business owners I have talked to where they have paid people in excess of $10,000 to build them a website that's a WordPress website or a low code solution website like Squarespace. They
Yep.
really are paying that much for somebody to drag and drop content onto a website for
Yeah,
them.
these aren't even modified either. They're
And
not
guess
even
what?
like
Yeah, and guess they're not custom like Next.js builds or anything like that. But I'll tell you what, those people are more than satisfied. They are like exuberant about how amazing their website is. And I'm like, you could have paid maybe half of that or less for the same website if you knew what you were doing. But that's the reality is as a business owner, it doesn't matter because the website serves its purpose and the investment of $10,000 is still worthwhile.
I was
Um,
gonna say that's the other thing too that people forget. I think they think like, oh, there's no jobs because they see all these layoffs and stuff. But any new business, anybody trying to reach out, even if it's just like a local group that wants to have something for meetup, you need websites. That's still
yeah.
our major
I mean,
number one way of getting information out there and reaching lots of people. And like
yeah,
you won't take a business seriously unless they have one. And the better it is, the more likely you're going to go there, right? Because it looks better, gives you a better representation of them. You can understand, the information, what they offer, all that.
And website
yeah,
design changes all the time. So even if somebody got a website 5, 10 years ago,
Yeah,
chances are it
shit.
looks really old and they need a new
yeah.
Yeah.
one.
Not to mention, like, if you're under the belief system that there is not work in web development, you're basically assuming that the internet is dead because
Yep.
that is literally what
It's
the internet
gone.
is. Like it's literally
Yeah,
like,
I think it's a fad. It's going to die out in a few
yeah,
years.
it's not gonna be here anyway.
Well, that's the crazy part too, because with web apps now, like software is going away. I mean,
Yeah,
what most
exactly.
stuff
Like,
is web
yeah.
apps, and I think when people
Somebody
realize
asked me
that
that yesterday. They're like, what is software development versus web development? And I was like, software development is when you build
web
apps
apps,
that exist on a desktop, which we don't have anymore.
because
Like,
think about it, it's easier to make though a web app because then anybody can use it. You don't have to worry about
yeah.
different,
And
operating
it can
systems
work
and
on all
stuff.
devices. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, it makes so much sense. I wanted to say, Bryce wrote in the comments, he has been waiting for a voice from above to tell him that he is ready to start charging. Bryce, I am your voice from above, buddy. It's time to start charging for your services, believe it or not. Now,
Mhm.
I wanted to actually like get into this and provide some like real world tips. Obviously, I think at this point people know you want to make money in this, you got to charge money, right? That's how it works, right? You want to make money as a web developer, you got to charge people money, which means you got to find clients. So, where would you guys go to find your first client? Like, what do you think is, if I'm aspiring web developer, just getting into this, maybe you've learned HTML and CSS, where do I find that client and what do I say to them?
I would start local first because I think that's a good idea. You're in town. That's always good because businesses, you're there, right? You're not far away or anything.
Yeah.
And just start looking online. Find, pick a couple industries, look at the websites and see who one doesn't have any. That's a good starting place if they don't have
Yeah.
a website. And two, who has terrible ones. And then that's your starting point. Make a list. Look at what they need too, because that's also important. Make sure it's not too complicated. Like you don't want to have to deal with a lot of databasing and stuff. You just want a simple like information type front-facing website. Like that's a good place to
Yeah.
start, I think. And then, reaching out to them basically, going there either in person or contacting them, I think is a good way to start and just say, hey, look, I noticed you didn't have a site or your site's outdated, I'd be happy to update it for you and go from there and see what happens. And like we said, you could even, if it's a simple site, offer for free first, just to get,
Yeah.
if you're really worried, if you think it might take you a while, and then, go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Or
about
you
you,
could,
Randall?
or here's another thing, because we keep saying offer for free, and yeah, that's great, but grow
Yeah,
a
you should.
pair
Yeah.
and
Yeah. It's here.
give them offer 100% money back guarantee. Say, hey, listen, I'm going to build you this
Mm,
website. It costs $3,000, $5,000. But if you're not 100% satisfied, I will give you 100% of your money back.
yeah.
That way, all of a sudden you're making money because like not making money, you don't
Yeah.
have the motivation. Like that money that they paid you, all of a sudden you're going to be motivated. You
That
have to
does
make
raise
it.
the stakes,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, like
Yeah.
David Campbell said too, like local nonprofits are a good way to start too. Like that's another thing
Yeah.
too. Like if you have a
Absolutely.
friend or like your church or a nonprofit that like that's a great place to start too, because they're gonna need one and they don't, necessarily know people either.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
networking is a great way. Like
Yeah.
literally the number of opportunities that come across my doorstep because of networking and not even intentionally networking. Just like
Yeah.
clubs and stuff that I participate in. I also go and do work at a co-working space so I can not spend my whole day by myself. And so, but like you get to meet people and they ask, what do you do? And you say, oh,
Wait, hold
web
on,
development.
pause. You're telling me that if I go outside, I get to meet people?
I
Is that how
know.
it works?
Wait,
Oh
It's
my
a novel
God.
concept. It's a novel
always?
Mind
concept. And
blown.
it's terrifying. So
Yeah, it sounds horrible.
so you might want to put on a diaper that day when you go and do it because it's terrifying. But
Sounds
yeah,
absolutely horrible.
it's crazy because people love to ask what you do. And
Yeah,
so you say, "Hey, I'm a web developer. I build websites. I make
that's
web apps."
that's like
And
exactly what I was gonna suggest. It
Yep.
is like one of the, I think, turning points for me as a developer, which I think is difficult for a lot of people, is when I just started referring to myself as a web developer. And the sooner you can do that confidently or not confidently, like the better. Because
That is so
right
true.
now you're identifying as whatever your old job was, and this group is called Programming for Career Changers, right? Our goal is to have you change careers. The more that you continue to identify with your old career, the more you will feel inclined to just stay in doing that. The faster that you're like, I am a web developer, I build websites for people. Even if you don't feel like you can confidently code a website from scratch, that's fine because you can still build
I
websites
am
with no code.
100%, I'm 99% confident that everybody here in this Facebook group can figure out how to make someone a WordPress site or a
Oh
Squarespace
my
site.
Oh
God.
yeah, without a
Yeah,
doubt.
There's 1%
absolutely.
of people who are just hopeless, but
Yeah.
99% of people
If
in
you just
here,
happen to end up here by smashing your keyboard,
Yeah.
you're the
you're like,
1%.
Yeah. You know what's funny too though? But like I think what people forget too is if you're learning web development too, you're gonna be able to do more with that Squarespace site than any other person that's not learning it would be able to do, right? Because you have a better understanding of it. And
Oh
most
yeah.
most business owners, like even though yes, you could go make a site yourself on there, one, it's frustrating. If you don't know what you're doing, it's time consuming as hell. And they might not have time anyway. Because if you're running a business, you probably don't have time for this kind of crap. You just need that thing up there, right? You need it to
Yeah.
exist and you need it to be done well. And that's where I think like too, like I think like we said, calling yourself a web developer is like one of the most important things is starting to identify that way because that's a mind shift, away
Yes.
from like what you
Totally.
were to something new. And it gives you that confidence to say, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree with both you guys. Like the, to me, the best place to start is your own network. So people that you already know, who you already engage with, friends, family, coworkers, colleagues, past bosses, things like that. And then right outside of that, which is your local community, like look at local businesses. When you call a business, and that is something that you have to do sometimes if you want to sell services, is you call a business. When you call a business and you say, "Hey, I'm so and so, and I live in the same town as you. I'm a web developer, and I want to help a local business to like build my portfolio." That means a lot that you are local to people. Um, so
Nice, Eric.
yeah, Eric has been
Way to
telling
do
everyone
it.
he's a web developer, and Eric is one of the
You are.
students inside of our program who's consistently been getting people who want him to build them a website, and
Yeah,
it's
he's already
literally
done
that
like
easy. It's like,
several like
yeah,
discovery
it's a
calls and stuff and like really good because it's all experience too. Like even I think Eric had one experience I'm gonna mention briefly, but like where like he got a discovery call with a guy and like the project ended up being too much, right? But
yeah,
that's okay because it was still a good learning experience. He
it
still
was a
made a
great learning
contact. He still made a
experience.
contact with somebody who might,
Yeah,
it was friendly. There was nothing. But I think
yeah,
that was great. It was a good
and
experience, and
I'll
you
say
go from
this
there.
too, like to Eric's credit, it wasn't over his head. It's that
No,
the guy was not willing to pay how much it costs for
the project that
said
size.
website that he wanted him to
We should
build.
say it was a web app. It was huge. Yeah, it was an e-com
Yeah, it
thing.
was it
Yeah.
was a website, right? But there was a lot of like complexities to it. And so the guy didn't want to pay a lot, and it's like, well, that would require a lot of my time, and obviously Eric values his time, right? We have to value our time. And so what to me, what's likely going to happen is either this guy's never going to have the website built, or he's going to go look everywhere else and realize that the deal that Eric was giving him was probably the best he could ever find. And then he's going to come back to Eric. And at that point, Eric can say, well, now it's 3 months later. I have a lot of other clients. If you want me to do this, now it's more than that, you know?
Yeah. I was gonna say too, I think one thing you need to keep oh, sorry, be real quick. One thing you need to keep in mind too is like any other business, like don't get discouraged if you get a no. Because look, the
Yeah,
reality is like that's
millions.
gonna happen, right? And like
Yeah,
that's always gonna happen. Even when you're getting work, you're gonna run into clients that are gonna not want it or be, on the fence, and you just move on. That's fine. It's still a good experience. You're still getting
yeah,
experience talking to people, and that's what matters. And you're still getting your name out there.
yeah. Uh, Go ahead,
So
Randall.
I wanted to give people like a really practical, like, if me personally, if I wanted to go out and get some clients this week,
Yeah,
exactly what I would
what would you
do
do?
is I would search in Google for whatever town you're in, and then search for medical professionals, because medical professionals make a lot of
Worst
money compared with
websites
other
too.
professions.
Yeah,
So and so like look up dentists, look up podiatrists, look up veterinarians, look up like any type of medical
proctologists.
proctologist, whatever it is, whatever field comes first to your mind, that's what you want to
Yeah.
look for.
Proctologists, clearly.
Yeah, eye doctors, anything. And yeah, and
Proctologists.
so exactly. And so they've really got their finger on the pulse, so to
Yeah.
speak. And so
In the pulse. On the
yeah,
pulse or
and
in
so
the pulse?
In.
okay, okay. So anyways,
Sorry,
you
sidetracked.
search, yeah, you search your town name and then whatever it is. So your town proctologist. And then
Got it.
you find a list of four or
Doing
five
that now.
proctologists. Well, there's probably, and you take a look at all of their websites. Now, there's a good chance that some of them don't even have websites, but there's also a good chance that at least one or two have a really nice website. So you want
Yeah.
to write down who that is, because that is who you're going to be talking about when you talk with these other people who don't have websites or have a really bad website. You're going to say, hey, I'm a local web developer. I was noticing that your competition, this proctologist and this proctologist, have really banging websites, like great pictures, and
Yeah.
your
It's very
website's
clear what they
lagging
do.
behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Your
was
And
gonna
that
say
website has potato
that
quality.
idea
Sure.
is really good
yeah.
too, because I think that's the other thing. Like when you're first looking for clients, it's overwhelming. So focusing in on a specific area like medicine or like, whatever, like, people that do like I don't know, I can't think of anything else right now off the top of my head. Like restaurants or
Lawyers.
something. Yeah, lawyers, whatever. Focusing on specific industries can be also a good way to just narrow down the pool at first and make it more manageable and like actually come to instead of just like, because you can just look and make lists forever. Right?
And
This is
Yeah.
generally
something where you need to do something.
they don't need interactive web apps. They need
No.
something that says what they do, where they're located, what their hours are, and how to contact them. And
They
that's
need an
it.
Yeah.
informative website with at most maybe like, yeah, like a page that has like a contact me or something,
Yeah.
right? That's
I
it.
want I want to add a little bit to that. So Bryce in the comments said this before, but he was talking about like building, like if you don't know how to build a website, that's what ChatGPT is for. And yes, it'll help you build a website, but if you're using low code solutions, which I want to get into in a second, like what are some solutions, but what I did want to mention is for a lot of people in here, if you don't have experience with sales and things like that, getting on a phone call can be very intimidating, like calling somebody. And I have to say, like, I was on Eric's first discovery call that he did, and he did an excellent job, right? A lot of that is just breathing and being calm and understanding, like, there's a million people out there. If you totally ruin this, screw this up, that person's going to forget in a day and like no harm, no foul. Like
You'll live.
there's another
Yeah.
person to call the next day. But if you do want to sort of like avoid the tension of that a little bit, at least when you're starting, I don't recommend doing this always, but what Randall's suggesting is, you go out there and you basically take a couple hours out of your day and you start digging through websites, right? I would say use ChatGPT to make you a list of high paying businesses, like high profiting businesses, like medical professionals, like lawyers, like things like that, accountants, like people who have money to buy a website, right? Because you don't want to go after, you know, I don't know, like,
If somebody's being stingy about the website price, you say, okay, thanks for your time. When you're ready to pay for it, you can
yeah,
contact me. Because
yeah,
if they're being
exactly.
stingy before you do any work at all, they're going to be terrible by the time you're
Yep.
actually doing work
Yes,
for them.
absolutely. In fact, and that is a great point, is like the people who are like typically willing to pay and don't care about the details are usually the best customers. The people who want a discount are usually the worst ones because they'll nitpick everything and like, you know, like be over your shoulder as you're building the whole thing. But what I was going to say is going back to that is like take a few hours, make a list of websites, right? Like go through go on Google and search all those different things you looked up on ChatGPT, like all the industries and your local area, whatever that is, like your city name or like local region. Look those up, look through the websites, find the shitty ones, make a list of them, make a list of their contact information. And if you don't want to call them, start emailing them, right? And screenshot their website and screenshot their competitor's website. And then what you're trying to do is basically just build some pain so they call you and give them one call to action. Make it very simple. Say, hey, so and so, I'm a web developer. I noticed that your competition's website is doing better in Google. I think there's a couple things that you can improve. It's very obvious when you look at these two screenshots. You know, this is your competitor, this is your website. If you'd like to, you know, discuss how we can improve your website, give me a call here or email me back here, and we can schedule a time. Very simple, casual website, not salesy. Like just like, hey, notice your website blows and your competitors is great. Give me a call, and you can do that to like the whole list. Make a list of 50 of them, and more than likely you're going to get at least one person contact you back, right? And if not, you continue calling them. Like part of sales, and I've talked about this before in other live streams we've done, but I've done a lot of sales in my life, and part of that is part of the sales process is not just one and done. Like you have to contact people multiple times. So they don't respond to your email, give them a call and say, hey, John Smith, I emailed you the other day. Did you happen to get my email? I was talking about your competitor's website and how we can improve your website. Would you like to hear, you know, how we can do that? So, yeah,
I was just gonna say no, I think that's good advice because every phone call you make, every time you reach out, that's experience. Whether it leads to a job or
totally.
not, it's experience getting over that fear that you have. Because everybody has that fear, dude, of contacting people randomly to sell stuff. No, nobody initially wants to do that, but you get over it really fast because it's not a big deal. And you're
Yeah.
reaching out to people who need the service. That's the other thing. You're finding them. That's nice. Like imagine if you needed a website and somebody came to you. And like, like that's awesome.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. So like everybody wants to get a job with a big company. But if you don't have projects you've done on your own, if you don't have websites that you build on your own, no company's gonna really take you on because it's a lot of risk on their end.
Yeah.
But if you've been doing this, not only are you making money making websites for other people, but then supposing, 6 months down the line, a year down the line, you want to go and apply for that job wherever, they're gonna say, do you have experience? And you'd be like, as a matter of fact, here's 20 websites that I already made. And they'll be like,
Yeah.
oh,
For
okay.
real businesses with
Yeah.
real users, right? That matters because I've spoken to so many people
Yeah.
who've done a boot camp, a university degree, had private coaching, had a career coach, had a recruiter working with them, and they still couldn't find a job. And the number one thing that I asked them, the first question is, have you built anything for real that people use? And they always are like, no, I just did all the boot camp stuff. And I'm like, that's the number one reason
Yeah.
why no one wants to hire you because you can't prove that you can even do this. Like you're just showing them a to-do app that you copied somebody else. It doesn't work that way.
Well, the other thing too is when you build real projects, you can explain them from
Yeah.
start to finish. You can explain all the things, problems you had, how you solved them, and that's what companies want to know in the hiring process. They
Yeah,
want
they
to
want
understand,
problem solvers.
yeah, yeah, what's your thought process? How'd you figure this out? What did you do when you ran into this? And if you just did like, projects from tutorials and things from boot camp, you're not gonna have any answers to that because you didn't run into anything. It was all for you, made for you, made to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, totally. Well, we're getting to the end here. Before we sort of head out, I want to say a couple things. Number one is I want to just talk briefly about what options people can use for low code solutions. And then also, I realize that this conversation is just scratching the surface of what it takes to actually like go from, hey, I don't know how to build a website to I have a paying client now. How do I deal with this? Right. And one of the benefits of being inside our web dev incubator is that you have three coaches, the three of us here, who walk you through every step of that. Right. When Eric got his first discovery call, I was like, hey, dude, I'll jump on that call with you and I'll be there as like moral support and message you through Telegram so that, you know the right questions to ask and like things like that. So it is tough in the beginning, admittedly, if you don't have sales experience, if you don't have experience building websites, if you just don't feel comfortable with it, which you're not going to the first time, the best thing that you can actually do for yourself is have a coach, somebody who can like give you the next step, right? Because this big thing of going from I don't know how to build a website to I have a customer and I'm building them a website and delivering it. There's a lot of steps in there, and we glossed over like a lot of that right now. And you're going to need to know that. So if you do want to know that, if you want that support group, we're here for you. We have, a premium product, which is our web dev incubator, where we actually coach students one-on-one in group settings on anything that they're working on. So whether that's, finding a client right now so that I can start getting paid as a web developer, or that's learning Next.js, or that's learning CSS, right? We do it all. So that's a really great opportunity. But before we sort of head out, you guys want to give some suggestions of a couple different low code solutions that you think are useful for people, maybe small learning curves so that they can build websites for people. They don't need to know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. They can literally just like drag and drop and build websites.
Well, anything like Squarespace and stuff are great. There's tons out there. And I think
Yeah.
they'll let you, if you do know some HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, they'll let you do some modifications to it as well if you know what you're doing. And I mean, they have great templates and stuff that you can choose from. Makes it very easy to find something that works for your client. I think those are great places to start.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I would suggest the same. Like Squarespace is usually my go-to just because I've been using it the longest. It
I think they're
has
one of the
very
best
cool
ones, aren't
features.
they, too? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this though, there's price involved with everything. So depending upon the features that you want, you may have to pay a little bit more. And ultimately that's not you, that's the client. They have to pay for that. So who cares at that point, right? Um, so Squarespace is a good option. Also, Wix is a good option. I know Anthony has used that inside of our group. He's built a lot of projects with Wix, so that's another great one. WordPress is an option, but it is a bit more complicated, I would say, for most people. There's a learning curve. And also with WordPress, you have to handle hosting and things like that. And, it's not always the best. My experience is that, like, I don't personally like WordPress websites. I feel like they were great years ago, but they're a little bit clunky
Exactly.
now.
10, 15 years ago, WordPress was the go-to. I made hundreds of
Yeah.
WordPress sites back in the day,
Yeah.
but nowadays I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
It's also,
Squarespace is the
Agreed.
way to
yeah.
go.
It's
Yeah.
also important
And
to keep in mind, too, that if you're going to hand this thing off, the
they have to
business
be able
owner is
to,
going to be able to work with it, right? And
yeah.
Squarespace stuff is much easier to work with. Like if you're not going to be
Yeah.
managing the updates and everything like that down the road, you need to hand this thing off. It needs to be something the owner can actually do too. And you need to keep that in
Yeah.
mind.
And honestly, that's actually a perk for most business owners. Something that you can tell them when you're pitching them is that, hey, when I finish building this website, I'm building it with Squarespace. You can tell them that. And then say, like, I'll give you a 30-minute instructional on how to use it and how to update your website. Business owners love that because then they have the freedom to change things later to like I'm working with a business owner right now, and I can't tell you like every time I get on a call with him, he wants to change like the text of the website, and it's like he's changing the text he's already changed himself before. And I'm like, listen, like that's great, but like we don't need to make those changes now because when I pass this off to you, you can change any word you want on the website as many times as you want. Like that's on you. So yeah, I mean that's a great one. And then the other one I was going to suggest is if you're building some e-commerce site, because that's another thing that you're going to get a lot, is there's a website called Shopify,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
they are good.
very similar to Squarespace in the way that it's like a drag and drop builder, but it's specifically for e-commerce. And it works really well. It has different integrations built into it. You can build your own store, and there are plenty of other ones out there. So I don't necessarily recommend like just those ones are the only ones to look at. Based on your needs, your budget, what you're most comfortable with, there may be other ones. So you can very easily just Google them or use ChatGPT to list them out for you. Just say, low code website builders.
And once you know what the project requires too, then you can start exploring your options and decide which is best. And they have clear pricing. It's not like it's hard to figure out what it's going to ultimately
Yes.
cost the client. So they'll know ahead of time and everything too.
Yeah.
Nice.
So cool. I hope you guys got a lot of value. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you are interested in getting some extra help becoming a web developer or landing clients, that is exactly what we do inside of our web dev incubator. It is not a boot camp. It is a coaching program. We are coaches just like your football coaches in high school or your soccer coaches or whatever. You want to become a professional soccer player. We're the people who help guide you and give you feedback on what you're doing and help you just become a better web developer. So if that's what you're looking for, we're happy to have a discussion with you about the program. There's no pressure. We do free action calls. We give you 30 minutes of value of, just getting information about what you're doing, giving you some free feedback. And then if the program's good for you, awesome. If not, it's fine. But if you're looking for that extra little bit to get you outside of this like spiraling of self learning, because we're there, we all went through that. We were like, this web development's cool. And then like one day we're like, you know what? I'm actually going to take this seriously. Instead of just sort of like playing around with it. Like it's a fun game. I want this to be my career. If that's you, if you want this to be your career, we're here to support you. So you can drop in the description here in the comments the word money.
There you go.
Today we're talking about making money as a web developer. So drop the word money down there, and we'll reach out to you. Or if you want it faster, just reach directly out to us. We are here inside the group. We're always happy to answer questions. So reach out, DM us, make a post if you have to, and say, "Hey, I'm trying to get one of those action calls. Who can help me out?" And we'll reach out to you. But yeah, with that, do you guys have anything else to say or nope? Cool. Well, thank you guys for tuning in today. If you are inside the Web Dev Incubator, we'll see you in about 20 minutes for our accountability and motivation call. I think the best part of everybody's Saturday. So with that, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week, bright and early at 9 a.m. And enjoy your Saturday if you're not in the Web Dev Incubator. If not, if you are, then we'll see you in like 20 minutes. And then I'll say that to your face because we'll be in our own little Zoom call.
Later, guys.
All right.